In this video, this is going to be about the PopSugar Reading Challenge of 2025, and I did do an earlier video of this. So I wrote down the titles and I highlighted the ones that I finished. So as you can see, I didn't really read that much again, but counting down, I read about 12 books on the reading list, and there were a few others that were not on the list that I did end up reading. So you know what? I'm sorry, it's too dark in this corner and I cannot read this, so hold on. Okay, I really need to get some kind of light around this area here. I wish this was better lighting, and I'm sorry. Anyway, so the PopSugar Reading Challenge. A book with 2 or more books on the cover or book in the title. I started it. It's called Ex Libris, but I didn't get to finish it. A book that fulfills your favorite prompt from 2015 PS Reading Challenge nonfiction book. I started on The Jewish Tapestry of Time, but I didn't get to finish that on time. A book under 250 pages. I read this in January. The Reader, and this is the one that Kate Winslet won the Oscar for. It's about a woman who takes a young man under her wing. She sort of helps to nurture him after he gets really sick, but she can't read, and so she helps him read to her. And then little by little, as he's growing up, he's starting to learn about, you know, what his country went through during World War II. So this is kind of like right after the war wraps up, and he's going to school, and then I believe the gal's name is Hannah. Yeah, so she's tried for a specific incident that took place with the women in this concentration camp, where she had them read to her, and then something happened where they were trapped inside of this building, and it was somehow bombed and the doors were locked. It's a unique read. I would definitely give that book a 4 out of 5. I would take some notes on that one. I found it interesting. Did it really blow me away? No, but it was a definite unique experience to read it when I did. A book I got for free, and one of the books that is part of my new acquisition is Jerry Jamott's Make It Happen. You can watch the interview that I had with him, so go check him out. It's about he is the groove master. He plays the electric bass, and it was interesting to read it. I did assist in helping him look at the typos in this edition, because he is working on a new one. But it was interesting to discuss with him. The most unique thing that I took away from the interview itself was, "Don't let perfection be the enemy of the good." I love that quote, and I will apply that, and it's great. A book mentioned in another book. I believe I have not, to this day, it is a classic, but I have not read the Odyssey, and I have not read the Iliad. But reading those two definitely prepares you for a book that I did end up finish reading later, and I will get to that. A book about a road trip. I do not recall when I started it, but I think maybe I got halfway through, but it packs a punch. And it's William Lee Heat-Moon's Blue Highways. I'm flagging just about every other page, because there is just so much history about his journey. Because if you look at the maps, there's red lines and then there's blue lines that indicate streets or highways, main roads, rivers, and so on and so forth. The blue highways are the roads where a lot of people, they don't take those roads to the main places where they want to go. So that's what he did. I got about halfway through, but I didn't finish it. A book containing creatures that aren't dragons. Originally, I had the Amulet of Samarkand. The only time where I've heard the name Samarkand was from the musical Once Upon a Mattress, that was based on The Princess and the Pea. So the Nightingale of Samarkand is a bird that Queen Agravain brings in to sing Princess Winifred to sleep on the 20 mattresses, and she has no idea that not only is there a pea underneath, but there's a little surprise in there as well. A few surprises. But I didn't get to that one. Instead, the second to last book that I ended up reading was Circe by Madeline Miller. This goddess is one of the side goddesses that you sort of glance over. This brings her to the front. This takes her from the background to the foreground of this saga of this goddess and her family, the mortals that she meets, including Daedalus, the one who created the maze for the Minotaur, the man who created the wings of wax for him and his son Icarus. She meets Odysseus, and she ends up pregnant with his child. I'm not going to go too far into that. But she's banished. It's interesting, what I learned about Circe is there's a word, and I did make a copy of that one page. Circe has a particular power that she ends up sort of like finding out later. She's the sister to, I want to say his name is called Aeetes. She's a daughter of Helios, who is, I believe, I think he's the blacksmith to Zeus. Come on, there's Scylla. She's banished because of her particular, yes, here it goes, pharmacus. And the word pharmacus is like where we get the word pharmacy, pharmaceutical. And it's another word, pharmacus, which is witch. If you were to go back to Catherine Howe's The Physic Book of Deliverance Dane, the reason why the women were tried is because some of them did not only not go to church, but the women would go to the forest and be there for quite some time. They would bring baskets, or they would just bring themselves, and they would come back with different kinds of herbs and roots, and they would make these concoctions for medicinal purposes. But whatever occurred, they were able to help manifest it somehow to help others in return. But in the story, Zeus and the Olympians are more afraid of witchcraft than their own powers. Circe is a goddess, and she is able to hear the earth speak to her on which herbs, which roots, which plants to pull and make these concoctions. So this is where we get another term like apothecary, pharmacist. All of that stems from this story. But her, oh my God, it's a saga of who she meets. She even meets her niece, Medea, and her Casanova of a husband, Jason, and because Medea she was considered a witch because of what she did. And so that's where the power stems. Circe is it's an incredible read. Madeline Miller, thank you for bringing the story to life. And the story is so good. As you can see, I'm going to have to buy it for my collection because it's, again, almost every page is a painting waiting to emerge. It's absolutely beautiful. I tried reading The Song of Achilles, her first debut novel, but I couldn't get into that one. But this one is spectacular. So I highly recommend Circe. A book that is considered healing fiction, another one I highly recommend. And this one can also meet one of the challenges for the 2026 reading challenge as well. And I will get to that. I'll get to that list in a separate video from this one. But I highly recommend Before the Coffee Gets Cold. These customers come to this cafe called Funiculi. The customers come to this cafe for one particular purpose. They're regular patrons there. And their one thing is to sit in a particular seat where this woman in white is always sitting. She is known as the Ghost. It's a chance for these people to go to the past, but no matter what they do, they can no matter how much they try to right a wrong or to leave a message, they cannot alter what's already been been done. But they can leave a message for someone from the past or the future in that seat. Only when the woman in white goes to the toilet. She is always there as a regular. But the rule is you need to drink the coffee before it gets cold. Because if you don't, you become the ghost and you remain in that seat forever. It's a beautiful work of healing fiction. And there's three more books that go along with it. And it's the same author. I can't think of the author's name right now. I have his name written up here. But he's also the one who wrote Never Let Me Go. I have not read that book of his yet. But definitely, so far, I definitely recommend those ones. Now, there were a few other books that I did read that were not on the list. Again, I did read The Angel Tree, learning about the Baroque Christmas tree of the Medieval Sculpture Hall. I would like to talk about FOMO, fear of missing out. I want to read more books on acting, and I ended up reading one of them this year. Stanislavski's method system, which I did create a workbook. Yeah, the Stanislavski system, the professional training of an actor by Sonia Moore. I did write a bunch of pages and notes in here about the specific methods that Stanislavski had taught, and I cannot for the life of me don't know what happened to the notebook, but I also made, it's like a special workbook that I made for myself based on this book. It's called Sidetracked Home Executives from Pigpen to Paradise. And I actually ended up getting a color-coded flashcard deck to specifically meet the categories of each of these tasks. I would check that one out, Sidetracked Home Executives, because if your house is a mess, if you seem like you have no control over your current situation, and you have children, or if you don't have children, or if you want to become a little bit more organized, and I've seen a few YouTube videos where people actually write down these things, write down the tasks on those note cards, and write down what tasks they need to meet for that week, or that month, or that day, or that hour. So I would go check it out. A book about a food truck. This is my favorite book of the year. Jared Reck, I'm so glad I got to interview you. Donuts and Other Proclamations of Love is the book to read if you haven't read it yet. It's because it's so much more than just a food truck. But that one can also match one of the book tasks for this next year, a book about teen angst. What more can you say about teen angst except when it comes to the final year of high school before college, where everything that you're thinking about your future is now. This is the year to kick it in gear. What is it that you want to do? These are the rules of the road, and so on and so forth. It's brilliant. And that book had a good pace. It had such a good pace, and it kept going. It didn't stop, which was great. The last book I read, oh my God, I just finished it tonight. The Dallergut Dream Department Store. This met with the task, a book that reminds you of your childhood. I go to the mall as much as I could, but as a kid, I would be there almost every weekend, and I would visit my favorite stores, such as the Imaginarium. They had a door for the adults to walk through and a smaller door for the kids to walk through from the entrance. That was so much fun. And then you had Sanrio. Oh my God, for a little girl like myself, Hello Kitty galore. That was it. You had the San Francisco Music Box Company. Oh my God. Music boxes from the most wonderful craftsmen. Things that you don't normally see at that mall anymore. They had the Disney store there that catered to every age imaginable. Natural Wonders. After The Hunchback, I became obsessed with gargoyles and everything from that particular store. Can't think of another one that I used to visit all the time. But when Borders Bookstore opened up, Every weekend I was there. I was there. I think that store was there for a good, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, possibly. But it reminded me of my childhood. But this is more than just, there's a reason it's called the Dream Department Store. You have the 5 legendary greats that Dallergut specifically has them as the dream makers. And what they do is that there's this new worker that comes to work for the department. Her name is Penny. Day and night, visitors, both human and animal, shuffle in to purchase their latest adventure. And in this case, they're all about dreams. And you can also, the character Santa Claus makes an appearance in here as well, where he sells dreams for Christmas. Anyone who has something to aspire to. And yes, Penny, as she goes through each department, she learns about the quirky workers that work there, like Baby Nap Rockabye, Maxime, Speedo, Vito, what's his name? Vigo Myers, and a few others. What really did it for me was the last chapter before the 2 epilogues. This character named Doge, I want to say the guy's name is. He is the dream maker, where dreams of the dead or dreams for the dead or something. I forgot what it's called, but whatever person who is on their last hour, their last days, leaves a dream for their loved ones from this department store. I'm not going to give all of it away, but I definitely would give this book, I'm kind of a mix, maybe a 4 out of 5 or maybe even a 5 out of 5. I'm kind of mixed, but I would definitely take notes on this one. There's a few pages where I wanted to write down some of my favorite quotes, but it's so different. So thank you, Mai Lee, for writing this wonderful story. It's definitely worth it. A book written by an author who is neurodivergent. Different, Not Less by Chloe Hayden. Every person in the world needs this book. I don't care if you're on the autistic spectrum or not. You need to have this as part of your shelf, because it talks about, Chloe Hayden talks about her happily ever after. And she definitely highlights certain Disney films that I loved watching as a kid. But she was also bullied because of a condition that no one could figure out what was wrong. There was nothing wrong with her. She just had a different heightened sense of knowledge, and she was very, very shy. And the word neurodiversity didn't really come to light until probably the late 20, up until like maybe 2015, possibly, maybe around that time. But it's almost like a self-help book as well as a guidebook. She did so much research. And because she's from Australia, some of these rules, some of the rulings for people who are on the autistic spectrum, I hope that they made changes. Because she's a definite speaker and advocate for neurodiversity. A book centering LGBTQ plus characters that isn't about coming out. I finally read it. The House in the Cerulean Sea, about Linus Baker and the fact that he works for this Department of Magical Youth. And he goes to oversee the orphanages of these headmasters and his orderlies to make sure that, that they're being treated well, that there's no misgivings. But then there's this one orphanage that Linus Baker goes to that has 6 orderlies that are not really talked about much, and they're almost unknown. The headmaster there is very secretive, very, very mysterious, by the name of Arthur Parnassus. And one of his young orderlies is the Antichrist, called Lucy, and that's short for Lucifer. This book, I definitely could see, I don't know if it has been. I don't know if it is on the challenge list, but it probably is, because when you talk about anything that has to do with the Antichrist, and you have real conservative religious groups they're not going to want to touch this book. But it is so different. It's so unique, because when we discuss, when teachers especially and parents, when we discuss children who are different, it's sort of like, but Miss Peregrine's Home for something children. I forgot the title. But imagine if those children were put in an institution. It's sort of like, this is, my brother said it had a very Hayao Miyazaki kind of a feel to it. But Linus Baker and Arthur Parnassus, they're kind of very distant from each other at first, but as Linus learns more about the 6 orderlies, including Lucy, he understands why Arthur Parnassus is doing this. It's a unique read. It was good. I don't want to say it was short. It definitely took time to get through it, but I highly recommend that one. It was great. Okay, now, I originally had 2 different titles on this one, but then when I was going through the library catalog, I came across 2 titles that did it for me. 2 books with the same title. So there's this author named Wife-Bodkins. He goes, that's his pen name. He is a teacher. He is a master storyteller. I checked out his site. I would love to get to interview this guy. He's a storyteller, musician, and he has his own tour. He travels to different schools, telling them about the different folkloric stories from around the world. And one of these stories that he retold was called The Crane Wife. In Japan, there's this folkloric tale where a crane, during this one stormy night, a crane is injured outside of this guy's home. This guy is as poor as a church mouse. He goes to the crane to help nurture it and to help heal it. And then in the morning, it's healed and it leaves. Then the next day, a mysterious woman appears at his home and says, I will help you with your business so that you can continue to live. And so she helps this guy make special sales for patrons that purchase his sales for their boats during the certain seasons of the year. But she tells him, I will help you. They end up getting together. They end up marrying. But she says, while she's working to help him make the sales, he must never look at her. He then starts to see a change in his wife, and he doesn't like what he's seeing. He becomes very concerned, so he breaks the promise. He sees his wife, and he cannot believe that what he sees before him is the crane making the sails from her very own feathers. And once that happens, she transforms into the full crane, and she disappears, leaving him as destitute as he was before. There were 2 other books by Wife-Bodkins that I did read called, I want to say, and I have pictures of them and I'll show them here. I think this one is called The Spider Web Ornaments, or The Miracle of the Spider Webs. And the other one is called The Banshee Train. That was again, these are all children's books. But going back to The Crane Wife, Patrick Ness is known for writing When a Monster Calls, which became an impressive film. But he also wrote a story entitled The Crane Wife, which kind of has the same thing. But imagine taking a Brothers Grimm's fairy tale, or Hans Christian Andersen, or Charles Perrault's fairy tale, and intertwining it with something for modern day society. That's what's happening here. We have this guy, George Duncan, and this takes place in London, and he investigates when he hears a bunch of commotion in his backyard. There's this huge storm, and he sees a crane that is injured. So he helps the crane. She's been shot through with an arrow in one of the wings. He removes the arrow from the bird, and the crane flies away. So he has this special book, like a special store where he takes cuttings from discarded books, which basically is like a personal hobby, but I think his store is something else. But in walks Kumiko, and she asks George to help her with her own artwork, and this is cutting from what looks like the most delicate slices of feathers. We also see a modernized, almost I want to say like a present day story taking place along with the myth of the Crane Wife. And what is unique about the story is in certain chapters, it also highlights George's family. There's some words that are in French because there's some sort of a French connection here in the story. But like here on page 77, we have 1 of 32. What does that mean? So as the story continues, there's 32 tiles that Kumiko makes. As we can see from the very first, here we have the house. This is the crane. And this is kind of like what she's making from all of these cuttings also of different discarded books, but she's making them from specific tiles. And every time when she displays this artwork in George's store, people are interested to buy them. And as you read through each of the tiles, there's another story that's going on. And that kind of parallels what happens in the present with George Duncan and his family. What threw me off, which is why I would give this book, I would say maybe a 4 out of 5. Again, this took some time to get through. I want to say some of the books this year took longer than usual to read through, I guess because of the content. But like, for instance, after you read 32 of 32 tiles, there's an incident of a fire that changes the course of the story. But it says the fire began like this, 1. Then it says the fire began like this, 2. Then the fire began like this, 3, 4, 5. My question is, what does that have to do here? It's almost like the incident of how the fire started is seen from different perspectives, but I just felt like that totally took away from the story, and I felt personally, I just was like, why was that included? That just threw me off, and then it goes back to what actually happened. So that's the only part of the story that confused me, but I would definitely check it out. A classic you've never read, The Yellow Wallpaper. And this was based on my interview with Brooke DeRosa, who wrote an opera based on The Yellow Wallpaper that premiered at, I believe it premiered at Carnegie Hall, if I'm not mistaken. Sorry, I had to adjust this thing because it was slipping. Anyway, so yeah, the Yellow Wallpaper was it's a short story about a married couple. A woman starts to go mad, and her husband basically has her locked up in her room, and there's this yellow wallpaper that's all around, and the yellow wallpaper begins to sort of take on a life of its own. And the ending is weird. Let's just put it that way. But it definitely is a classic. Take a read. Why not? A book where nature is the antagonist. Into Thin Air by John Krakauer. This is the entire his personal eyewitness account of the Everest disaster of 1996. It's nonfiction. There's a lot. But it's interesting to see that this is the reason why rules for today's mountaineers and future Everest tourists need to follow these rules for a reason, because of past events that didn't go well. But it was interesting how Krakauer highlights how the Sherpas view Everest as the mother mountain that you do not mess with. This is like nature at her full power, basically. And when something that is so sacred to one specific culture, at some point it becomes something of curiosity, that now it becomes a tourist attraction that attracts not only countless individuals, but You know, the price of going to Everest has multiplied maybe 3 to 4 times higher than it originally was. Tourists were not considerate. There were groups of Sherpas and other guides that have actually taken trash of all those oxygen tanks off the mountain, you know, during certain times of the year. And you know what? Going to Everest is a huge risk. Okay, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And are you physically and mentally prepared to tackle the mountain? Is it worth it? There's this documentary called, I want to say it was called Death on Mount Everest. And it was the Nepal earthquake disaster, because when the earthquake occurred and the avalanche came after, 19 people were killed at I think it was the second base camp on Everest. Anytime when you go mountaineering on any of these mountain peaks, like probably the most lethal outside of Everest is K2. But if you want to understand the power of Everest and why people take the risk, why they seek that kind of adventure, if you're interested, I would definitely read it. Nature is the antagonist. Nature is the enemy. And finally, the book that probably took the most to get through, but I managed to finish it. And I want to say I started it in early October, almost to the end of October, but it really took a long time. A book that features a character with chronic pain. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. You have the characters. It's basically a soap opera about gamers and how they came to be game creators. You see the two characters of Sadie and Sam. They both love games. They grow up with each other. Who is the character that's in chronic pain? It is Sam. Because at that point when Sadie first meets him, he is, I think he's 10 or something at that time, or 12. He's in the hospital with a severely broken foot. And at one point in the story, it becomes so bad that he has to have his foot amputated. But this book takes, I'm not a gamer. I mean, I used to play Mario Brothers with a friend of mine, but I really wasn't much into like games and multiple player games like MMORPGs. But that's basically what occurs in the story. Each of them takes inspiration from literature and from art, and several points they are collaborators, but because they're so different, they also have creative differences, and they often will clash. Simultaneously, what's happening is that they also have a few relationship with other partners, and it seems like these two were meant for each other. It's sort of like a Ross and Rachel kind of effect. It's like, we were on a break. No, we were not. It's interesting to see how they came up with their game designs and who they sell it to and what company has this. And they also have friends and family that come and go, including one named Max Watanabe, who is kind of like the glue that holds the two of them together when they're trying to clash each other apart. But what's interesting about the story is it suddenly takes a dark turn towards the end of the story. How far can artistic creators, whether they are creating art for museum exhibitions, or if they are filmmakers, if you are writers, if you are game creators, how far are you willing to take your art and cross hurdles that become political targets? So Only when I was watching NCIS did I come across the term MMORPG, but it's a multiplayer game that can be played from 2 different people and more, from one part of the world to another, and they can interact. But in this story, in this one particular chapter, they are confronted by angry game players who are saying, how dare you take a character and make this character gay or bisexual or transgender or non-binary? This is affecting us as personal, because, and this is a reason why I tend to think that people who play games cannot distinguish virtual reality from actual reality. And this is where it becomes dangerous. But even this, crossing this political hurdle, and it's all about fear. The gamers, anyone, when something becomes a political issue, it's because one group is willing to accept it. They are more open about it, whereas the other group is not so open about it, because the reason why they hate it is because they're afraid. Where is this going to go? And I kept thinking as I'm reading the book, where does the title come in? Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Only after the tragedy explains it. Tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow is from Macbeth. And it's interesting to see how this is another book where the authors decided to use a phrase or a piece of dialogue from Shakespeare, such as What Dreams May Come. That was another book that was based off of Hamlet. Or you have To Be or Not to Be, the film version, I think, with Jack Benny, and it takes place in World War II, but it's from the soliloquy as well, from Hamlet. So it's interesting to see how Macbeth's monologue, I think it's the monologue from, I forgot what scene it's from in the play, but it's interesting to see how tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow came in. And it seems like the story continues for every tomorrow that Sadie and Sam are either apart or they are together. The ending was interesting. I think the conclusion could have been better, but that tragedy, that came out of left field. I was not expecting that. There are a lot of characters in the story. I would definitely take some meticulous notes if you plan to read it, but I highly recommend that one. I also give it a, let me just say this, if you love games, you will love this book. If you are a lover of art and music and literature, and you don't mind the technical game terms that are included in the story, then I would also recommend this book too. So between those two, it's between a 4.5 out of 5 to a 5 and a 5. I'm kind of mixed again with this one, and I don't believe there were any others that I came across. No. Anyway, that is, I forgot to highlight that one, but yeah, those were the books that I read for the 2025 PopSugar Reading Challenge, plus the others that were not on the list. All right, so the next time I will do a video, it will be the titles and the books for the PopSugar Reading Challenge of 2026. Plus, I'm also going to be going over my own book challenge list if you want to give it a shot. And I will see you guys for the next year. And I hope that my prayers are answered. I'll see you guys then. And keep reading my book, Dragons.